In 2005, at the Lethbridge International's car show, I spotted a 1937 Cord sedan, manufactured by Auburn Automobile Company from 1929 to 1932, and again in 1936 and 37. The company was noted for its innovative technology and streamlined designs, but by December 1937, the company was bankrupt. Cord innovations included front-wheel drive and hidden headlamps. Though the DeSoto used them in 1942, hidden headlamps did not reappear as a luxury feature until the 1960s, beginning with the 1963 Chevrolet Corvette. This is the story of the Henry J. Originally a shipbuilder, Henry J. Kaiser, in 1945, partnered with veteran automobile executive Joseph Fraser to establish a new automobile company. The new company was named Kaiser Fraser. Kaiser Fraser, later Kaiser Motors, produced cars under the Kaiser and Fraser, but soon found it could not compete with the big three, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. In 1950, at a time when American consumers were demanding big cars, Kaiser introduced a small car, the Henry J. It would prove to be yet another example of an automaker offering the right car at the wrong time. Cost-saving measures included fixed rear windows, no glove compartment or armrests. The rear seat folded forward as there was no trunk lid. Sales were poor. At about the same time, Nash sales of Nash's compact Rambler were successful, in part because Nash introduced it in 1950 as a high-value convertible. It was the only model, and it was marketed as a small car with numerous standard features to avoid consumers seeing it as inferior or substandard just because it was smaller. 1954 was the last year for the Henry J, and the next year its big brother, the Kaiser, was gone. The Jeep was Kaiser's most successful automobile venture when, in 1953, he bought Toledo-based Willys Overland, a maker of a Jeep that had become world famous for its service in World War II. Willys Overland was the maker of the engines for Kaiser's Henry J. Kaiser had entered the automobile manufacturing business in 1946, but by 1953, he was losing money. So when he bought Willys Overland that year for about $70 million, in the biggest auto merger of history to date, some argued that he was throwing good money after bad. He was down, but he was not out. What followed was an all-out marketing campaign to capitalize on the public's fascination with the Jeep. Kaiser's faith in the Jeep began paying off. Annual sales volume topped 160 million within 2 years, with a profit approaching 5 million. On a personal note, I vividly remember this period. Many people in this area of Lethbridge, were buying Jeeps. They seemed to be everywhere. Since I was at the age when I was supposed to be out shoveling the walk each winter, I was glad to find even the city was using a Jeep to clean our city sidewalks. Yes, the city did sidewalks. Can you believe it? My dad never fell under the spell of the Jeep as far as I know, although I did back in 1979 when I picked up a mini Japanese version, a Suzuki, which I used researching historic trails. I remember in the early 1950s going with Dad as he looked for a smaller car, smaller than the standard size that was being built at the time. That day, we looked at the Rambler convertible and the Jeep station wagon. I was excited, as getting a new car always is. Sadly, nothing materialized. By 1954, however, my dad arrived home with a Willys Aero Eagle. A year later, in 1955, the Willys car had ceased production, but our car survived. In 2001, while visiting a car show with my grandchildren, there it was, the car I had used to do all those crazy things that teenagers do. Until the last few years of my car show days, I had stopped to say hello to it. Many a time it stood there in the car show, just showing off. But soon it got lost. It didn't show up anymore. And I think it's been sold and is somewhere, but I don't know where. 5 years after Henry J. Kaiser died, Kaiser Willys Corporation was sold in 1970 to American Motors. A few years later, Renault Company of France bought American Motors. In 1987, Chrysler Corporation bought American Motors from Renault for the sole purpose of getting the rights to manufacture the Jeep. And that's the way the story goes.